Welcome to Easy Races Factory. I'm going to demonstrate how to put together your new folding gold rush. So the first step is just to get everything out of the box. Now we pull the bike out of the box. First we're going to empty the goodie bag and find the tools. Yes, we got 3 wrenches in here and 1 special Allen wrench. Some toe clips and straps, some spare nuts and bolts, spare inner tube, some instructions. Okay, the first tools I'm going to need are the Allen wrenches. Now we're going to pull the handlebar up. We'll loosen the handlebar clamp bolts a little bit so that we can pull the stem down and stick the stem into the fork. Now we're just going to rough set it a couple of inches down into the fork. And that'll just hold it for the time being. Same thing with the clamping bolt on the handlebar. Rough set it. Oh, I forgot I need to turn the handle. I need to turn the fork around straight, so I'm going to loosen there and turn the fork. Let's get it basically squared away there. Okay. Tighten it back up a little bit. That looks good. The next step will be to pull the rear wheel assembly, kind of watching the chain. There we go. Okay. Make sure everything's in place. And make sure we're aligned here. I've got a little rubber booty that I'm pulling back, and I'm going to pull back the locking pin for the suspension. And then if I push down, it'll push the mechanism together up against the internal spring. Now I'm just going to push this little booty up over. Good. Now the locking pin goes through here, but we have to put some weight onto the bike frame in order to do that. Now to put the locking pin in, we may need to compress the spring a little bit, so I'm going to bounce a little as I push. There we go. Now the mechanism is locked in place. Now we're going to connect the rear brake cable housing. Again, just get the housing into the slots. That one goes there. Then the next one goes right into there. Now we have a little quick release on the rear brake. We just hook it right together. There's a little special hooker. And we just latch this little quick release right into the brake holder. Did you see how that hooks in there? Now the brake's ready to go. Next we're going to put the seat on. First we'll remove the bottom half of the lower bracket. Just remove the 2 bolts. Now I want you to notice that there's a little alignment pin in the middle. We're not going to do any adjusting or tightening to the little alignment pin. We'll only tighten the 2 big bolts. So we'll just set the seat on the frame, and then we'll put the clamp onto it. Now we need to just snug the bolts, not so tight that we can't still move the seat. Just snug them just enough so we can still move the seat. Okay, seat slides back and forth. The locating pin we know is in place. Now we're going to put the seat back on. We need to remove all the bolts that hold the top cover plate on. And now we're going to put the seat back on. Just going to set the seat right down onto the plate. And the cover plate with its bolts goes right down on top. And we'll just start some of the bolts. Okay, now that I've got some of the bolts started, I'm going to lay the seat back against the tire so I can get to the 3 front bolts a little more easily. And just turn them down so they're not quite snug. We're not trying to over-tighten yet. Lifting up the last one. Now if we snug these up just a little bit, the seat back will be self-supporting temporarily. Good. Now we want to tighten the front 3 bolts until there's just a narrow gap left in the front edge. Now let's set the seat back to what looks to be a reasonably comfortable starting place. Just tilt it back a little bit. Now I'm going to tighten the 3 Allen bolts in the rear, and I'm going to make them good and tight so it'll hold my weight when I sit on the bike. Okay. Now we're going to put the front wheel on. I'm inserting the quick release lever. Spin the nut up a little ways. Need to remove the wooden safety plug. And we'll insert the wheel with the quick release lever on the left side of the bike. Tighten up the quick release lever. The front wheel's on. Tighten the quick release on the brake. Check the cables. Look good. Okay. Now we're going to put the pedals on. Take a look at the ends of the pedal. One says L, one says R. That's for left hand and right hand. The left-handed thread pedal goes on the left side. The right-handed thread pedal goes on the right side. So I'm actually turning this pedal in by turning it backwards from a normal screw. You will need a wrench to tighten the pedals up. This is about the only thing we don't include with the bike. An adjustable wrench usually works just fine. Tighten the pedal. Pedals need to be made real tight, and after 50, 100 miles you need to check the tightness again, or you can get a little clicking looseness. Now we need to make sure that the gear shifter number corresponds to the gear the chain is on. Well, the chain is on number 2 gear, the second from the biggest in the back, but I need to turn the shifter to number 2. Same thing up front. If the chain is on the big gear up front, that's called number 3. So now the shifters correspond and we can move the pedals. Now we're going to adjust the pedals to the proper leg length as a starter. Next we need to adjust the seat for the right leg reach. I need to push the pedal out to the full extension. And then I'm going to try and set my heel on the flat side of the pedal. I should just barely be able to reach the flat side of the pedal with my heel. So in this case I need to move the seat back a little bit, maybe a ½ inch. I've left the seat loose enough that I can wiggle and slide it back a little bit. Now I'll check again, see where we're at. Good, I can just barely reach the pedal with my heel. When I put the ball of my foot on the pedal, it puts the right bend in my knee. Now I'm going to tighten the seat up. Now I'm going to give a final tightening to the seat so it won't slip. Allen wrench, tight, tight, tight. That's good. Now we'd like to make a final adjustment on the seat back angle. I've left the seat back loose enough, just barely, so I can push it back, back, back. Now that's too far, so I'm going to pull the seat back angle back up. When you're first learning to ride the bike, you don't want to lean it too far back. That feels comfortable there. Now I'm going to tighten it in that position. Now I'm tightening up the front 3 bolts to the seat back clamp first. Real good and tight. Now I'm going to go to the back 3. Now I'm tightening the back 3 bolts. That's good. They ought to hold there. If the bolts are tightened down very tight, the seat won't move, but it's a little bit flexible. For a bigger person, somebody that's over 175 pounds, you're probably going to need the extra bracing of what we call the sprint braces. The sprint braces fit onto the seat to stiffen up the back of the seat. So somebody that's very large or very strong won't cause the seat to move. These are the sprint braces for extra bracing on the seat. So I'm going to show you how to install them. Take the nut off the bolt here, pull off the washers, and separate the two sides. Now this one, we're going to bolt right through the tube up there, and then pull off the tape here. Now we're screwing the 5mm bolt into the lower part of the sprint brace into the swing arm axle. A diagram does show you how to install the sprint braces, so keep that handy if you get confused. Okay, we're now installing the final part of the brace, pushing it down through the two clamps here, lining it up on the bottom of the seat. Then we'll turn the clamps so we can tighten down the clamps with the screwdriver. Now we're just going to tighten up the clamps that support the strut. Doesn't have to be real tight, just good and firm on both sides. Then we want to check to make sure that there's some clearance here. Now we're almost done with the seat adjustment, but we need to make sure that there's enough clearance between the ends of the bolts here and the swing arm so that as the swing arm moves up and down, it'll clear. If it looks like it's too tight, we may need to tweak these two braces out a little bit, or just one side, just by pushing a little bit like that. If you need to make a minor adjustment on the seat, if you just need to slide the seat back and forth, you need to loosen the two clamps here and here, and the two bolts underneath here. Now the seat will slide back and forth. If you want to change the seat back angle, you need to loosen these two here and the three bolts back here. Remember to retighten very tightly the three bolts here if you're changing the seat angle. Now I'm just going to make a final check that the handlebars are where I want them adjusted and that they're good and square with the front wheel. So I'm looking across the bar, making sure it's square with the front wheel, and then I'm going to tighten the stem up good and tight. And I'll also tighten the bolt here if I'm satisfied with the angle of how they're pulled back to me. Notice I've set the stem pretty high up. For a shorter person, you could insert the stem deeper into the fork. Well, we're just about done. We're going to check the tires for air and then take it for a test drive.